Hi guys, Dr. Ken Nordberg here again today, a rainy day here in Minneapolis. Again, we've had so much rain. For a while there this morning I saw this really bright yellow thing up in the sky and wondering what in the world that is, and then it occurred to me, it's the sun. We've had so much cloudy weather and rain. You'd think this was Seattle, not Minneapolis. Boy, if this keeps on into winter, we could end up with an awful lot of snow this year, but I'm here to talk about deer hunting. And last time I talked to you about hunting oak stands of oaks, any kind of oaks. Today we're going to talk about probably the more common type of feeding area stand sites for us stand hunters, mainly graze areas, I'll explain that a little bit, and browse areas, and that's kind of self-explanatory. Let's talk about what they look like to start with. Now, a graze area is a place where there's a lot of grass, and perhaps a lot of other plants, low-growing plants, that the sun can reach. Probably at least 4 to 6 hours of sunlight a day. Where you don't have a lot of sunlight reaching the ground, you normally don't have a lot of grass. Or these perennial plants, non-woody plants that grow up from seeds or roots every year, they need a fair amount of sun. So graze areas tend to be kind of open. And there might be some trees here and there, or maybe a clump of them here and there, but it's fairly open, so the sun can reach the ground. It might be a low wetland, or it might be a highland, it doesn't matter, but a lot of sun can reach the ground. And generally, whitetails find more of the greens they like to eat during spring, summer, and fall than anywhere else in those kind of areas. In deep forest wilderness area that we hunt, about the only places where those kind of areas exist is in old clear cuts. When old clear cuts are left to Mother Nature to fill in, usually we end up with patches, well, maybe 10 acres, up to 10 acres in size, where it's fairly open and stays that way. A lot of grasses and not many trees. Now, when you see an area like that in the woods, and there's other areas, we'll talk about farm areas at another time, but for now, if you're in the woods and you see an area out in the woods that looks fairly open, that you should be thinking right away, that could be a grazing area. And if you hunt between the beginning of an archery season until the beginning of a firearm season in November, in that period, that's a likely place to find whitetails feeding. Where I hunt, they don't start eating browse, the woody shrubs and saplings, tree saplings, until the 8th of November. And what's remarkable about that, year after year, it can be the 7th, and you can walk through an area where there are a lot of these favorite plants of our whitetails, and not see a single one that's been browsed. The tips of the branches are all normal, it looks just fine. And then the next day you walk through the same place and there's little raggedly white tips on these same plants all over the place. It's like little white flowers just starting to blossom all over the place. But they do it every year. It's like like they have their own personal calendars, and when number 8 comes down and it goes click in their mind, it's time to go eat browse. It seems to coincide a little bit with the buds on browse plants in Minnesota getting to be rather large in size on these plants. And maybe it's the buds that provide most of the nutrition that whitetails get out of eating these woody stems. Maybe. I'm sure the bark contributes, but those buds are probably important to the whitetails. But at any rate, getting back to the graze areas, because graze areas are relatively open, You don't want to be stand hunting right at the edge of one of those openings. You know, like before I get to that, I meant to get back to the graze area. How do you know if whitetails are feeding there? Well, if you go out and scout early, like right about now, before firearm season begins, walk out there, walk around in that open area and look for droppings and tracks out there. Sometimes it's really hard to find tracks. You almost have to be on your hands and knees to see them, but more likely you'll see droppings. Now, we'll get into it. This will be another another big session on another YouTube presentation, but sometimes all we get is droppings. Early in the season you don't see tracks very easily. Everything is covered up with all the greenery growing out there. But droppings, you almost always can see those, and that's all you really need. I have taken quite a few really nice bucks in a lifetime, where all I ever seen of them before I hunted them was one spot where their droppings were, some clump droppings, and the individual droppings were, say, an inch long, 3/4 inch long. It seems as though when we get into the period where bucks are thinking about does being in estrus, 2-3 weeks away yet, and then during the season when does are actually in heat, bucks get, maybe it's excitement or whatever it is, but they get sort of I call it a buck diarrhea. Their droppings get to be soft and they stick together and they form clumps. And so when you see clump droppings on the ground, it's almost always buck droppings. Buck droppings or clump droppings in the fall. You can almost bet on that every time. And even little buck fawns, they aren't interested at all in breeding yet. They get real interested when they're yearlings, but not when they're fawns. But even they will have clump droppings, little 1/4 inch droppings clumped together. Not always, but commonly. So clump droppings are buck droppings. So you're walking around out this open area, look especially for droppings. One thing about the clump droppings, earlier, like if you're scouting in September, for example, or early October, you'll find big droppings, 3/4 inch long, or 5/8, or 5/8 is 2.5-year-old buck. You'll find droppings that size that are not clumped. And that doesn't mean it's not buck droppings, but the closer we get to breeding, the more they become clumped. So early in the season there'll be puddles of individual droppings. But when you get into October, and especially beginning about the mid-October, when bucks start making antler rubs and ground scrapes, they're almost all clumped. But anyway, you go out there and you find droppings out there. Now, probably most of the droppings you'll find in this fairly open area where there's a lot of grasses, especially thin-bladed grasses, but there could be clover or alfalfa. We see red clover growing wild up in the area where we hunt, and whitetails love that in the fall. If I was making a food plot, I'd plant red clover every time, and it comes up on itself every year, and whitetails love it, and it helps them put on fat for the coming winter, which is good for them. But that's neither here nor there. Now, you find a lot of this out there, maybe some tracks in some soft soil here and there. And if those droppings are, most of the drops you're going to see are going to be made by does with young. And our does and yearling bucks, they're about the same size animal. Most of our does are 140 to 150 pounds, and most of our yearling bucks are about the same size. And they both have droppings about 1/2 inch long. And you'll see them in puddles. If you see them clumped, it was a yearling buck that made them, 1/2 inch long droppings clumped, that's a yearling buck. But anyway, 1/2 inch long, not counting the little nubbins at the end. Now, you can look closely at a puddle of doe droppings, and you'll see, there's a couple that are bigger than 1/2 inch here, and there's some that are smaller. So in the case of puddle droppings like that, go with the average size to be accurate at identifying the deer that made the droppings. So, half inch for does all the way from Montana to Maine and New York, half-inch droppings. Now, you'll see some smaller ones like 3/8 of an inch. Those are droppings of a yearling doe. Yearling does are smaller. They're only about 120 pounds here in Minnesota. Now, and then little fawn droppings are 1/4 inch long. So you can identify, here's a mature doe, and here's a yearling doe, and here's a fawn. And, oh, look at here. Here's some 5/8 inch droppings over here. That's a 2.5-year-old buck, 6 to 8 pointer probably. He'll weigh up to 195 pounds here in Minnesota. But if they're 3/4 of an inch or longer, that's a big one. He's been feeding here. So, well, you know, right away you're thinking, this is a good place to hunt in November when our firearm hunting season. There's a big buck spending time here. And when this doe, and if it's a big area, you know, a large feeding area, a large graze area, there could be maybe 2-3 doe home ranges, 125 acres in size each, abutting that. So there might be several doe families that are feeding in this particular area. That can happen. And if there are, you know, it's a bigger area, the odds are that one of them is going to be in heat when you hunt there are pretty good. If you hunt between, like here in Minnesota, between the 3rd and 17th of November, that's the primary breeding phase of rut dates here in Minnesota. If you hunt there and there's 3 doe families in this one big feeding area, chances are pretty good at least one of them will be in heat. And if it is, there's going to be a big buck following very closely that doe when you're there. And, you know, we count on that a lot. Yeah, us guys here in Minnesota, my sons and I, we count on seeing bucks with does in estrus. That's our #1 lure, does in estrus. But we can't always predict when does are going to be in estrus. And so sometimes it's just going with the best odds until finally, oh, here comes a doe out into the feeding area. Oh, there's a buck with her. So it'll finally happen, sooner or later. If you keep keying on feeding areas that are our current favorites of does, you're bound to see a big buck, or at least another mature buck, and you'll have a chance to take it that hunting season. If you didn't hunt anywhere else, your odds are going to be about as good as they can be when you follow that regimen for hunting. Stick to doe feeding areas. So when you find one, you should be thinking, hey, this is a prime spot. Problem with it is, of course, most hunters, and that includes me, can be easily detected by mature does and mature bucks when you hunt right on the edge of the feeding area. You know, like, here's the edge, and this is all the open area, and this is forest here. If you're right on the edge, chances are you'll only get one chance of seeing a doe with a buck, a big buck, in that feeding area. By the end of the first feeding period that you're there, one of those deer is going to know you're there, either by a scent, sound, sight, probably sight, because when you're right there. Whether you're on the ground, surrounded by a heavy cover, or up in a tree, surrounded by heavy cover. Now most guys up in trees aren't surrounded by heavy cover. They're easily spotted up there. From way over there on the other side of that feeding area. Oh, there's a hunter in that tree over there. And it'll seem strange. Some of the deer that you saw the first time you hunted there might come back to that same feeding area if it's a large one, but you'll notice they're way down there, quite a ways away from where you are. They're way on the other side, maybe sticking close to the edge over there. And then the next time you go, no deer, nothing. That's pretty typical, because no human is that good at stand hunting that they can't be detected on the edge of a feeding area, a forest area. And I've been working my best at becoming really good at that all my life in deer hunting. all the, well, this is my 74th season coming up. And I'm pretty good at it. If you keep doing things right, the odds that you're going to see a decent buck during the hunting season are very good. But don't count on it happening every time you go out there, you know. Sometimes it's like muskie fishing, where you have to make maybe 1,000 casts before you finally get one. With big bucks, maybe you got to hunt up to a week or maybe 2 weeks every day faithfully before you finally see it. Usually I usually have one by within 9 days, and there have been many years when I've taken on the first day. And I've done a lot of research with stand sites at edges of open graze areas. And I know, and you know, all my sons know the same thing, that you don't want to be right on the edge. You want to be 10, 20 yards back in the woods. And not only that, wherever you are, you want some kind of a natural feature in there that hides you. Something you don't have to do to hide yourself. Like, here's a fallen tree, here's a big boulder. Here's some really thick brush, maybe hazel, thick as they can be. A patch in front and near the edge. And when you sit down on your stool, it's so thick that you're pretty well hidden right up to the top of your shoulders when you're sitting there. That's good, that's fine cover. There's been times when the only thing I had was a young evergreen tree. The second biggest buck I ever took was taken while I was sitting behind a 6-foot pine tree. It's about this wide, a pine tree. I was looking through the boughs, you know, sitting on my stool. And boy, I was well hidden. That buck never saw me, never did. And anyway, but so I was sitting there. In fact, I had to kind of prune off a few little branches at eye level, and where I could get my rifle through into those branches, you know, and it would be clear all the way to where the deer was. But anyway, get back in there, 10, 20 yards. And oh yeah, a lot of guys, oh, they moan and groan about that when after they used to be sitting in tree stands for a minute. Oh, you can't see very far back here in the woods. Well, we always pick spots that have natural openings to the edge of that feeding area. There may be 2, 3 of them, you know. Well, there's a nice wide one over here, maybe 6 foot wide over here. Well, here's a spot, sometimes only a foot in diameter. Well, how much of a hole do you need to shoot a high-powered rifle with a scope on it? You don't need a big shooting lane. A hole that big is plenty good. That buck walks in there, oh, there's his chest. Take careful aim through that old paw. He's just as dead whether you got a 6 foot wide shooting line where you cut down all the brush and trees as he would be, you know, shooting through an area like that. You don't need all that open space. All that does, you know, most bucks nowadays, older bucks, when they see a freshly made shooting lane in the woods, they'll steer clear of it. Boy, they know that's dangerous. That's one of the things that tips them off. That's destruction by a human. A lot of destruction in the woods by a human, or construction, building things, like maybe with freshly sawed timber, all bright yellow, and 2x4s and plywood and all that kind of thing. Whitetail see that right away. And if the place stinks with trail scent all over the place, because the hunter's been doing all these things, there's trail scent all over the last 4 days at least, and every time you go out there, you put some more out there. So no, you don't want any of that stuff. So be back in the woods using natural cover. Now, more times that quite often, I've got a fallen tree, a big old spruce tree laying there. Oh, it's a nice height, it's up to here, and sit behind that thing. But my head's sticking up there. My head doesn't look like a grouse. I got my camel head net on and a camel cap on top of that. That's fine. That way, camel blaze orange cap on top. Camel blaze orange cap on top. That way, when I'm sitting there, my bright skin and white beard aren't going to catch that buck's attention when he comes walking by, or any other deer. I don't want other deer alarmed as well, especially those. They're my number 1 decoy out there. Well, anyway, so what I often do, I'll take an evergreen bough or a bough from a prune one off of a red oak tree, which are common in our area, and they hold their leaves all winter, so there's all these leaves on it. And I'll stick it into the top of that fallen tree, so it's up at head level. It's up here. Now, there's all kinds of holes in it. I can see through it just fine. I can get my gun barrel through there just fine. But to the deer out there in the clear cut, maybe you walk along the edge here and he looks over that way, he's not going to notice me with my camo head net on. And that will break up the outline, so that's important to me. But sitting on my stool behind a place like that, some natural feature. Sometimes we'll add a few. I'll show you a picture here. It's one of my son John. You see that buck laying down there in front of him? That one was only 3 feet away when it went by when John shot him. And you see that big boulder there? And there's a bunch of brush there on that one side he's behind there. Well, we added some of that brush. You know, there was some there to begin with, but we kind of built it up a little bit, so he could sit in there and see, there he is. You just see his head looking over the top there. So sometimes you can add a little bit without making it look obvious. And even a buck who lives here all the time never noticed that something's different about them. You know, any time you can find a natural, a stand type with natural cover that leaves little or no attention at all, you just don't have to touch a thing, and sit down there and be hidden by it, well hidden, that's an ideal stand. That's the best stand site in the woods. Better than anything you can buy. Nothing can beat a stand site like that with that kind of cover. Whether it's on the ground or up the tree. You know, nowadays, two of my boys and their sons, they use stand sites on opening weekend every year. But they pick spots like there are clumps of evergreens. Sometimes the stand will be on a popple tree, big popple tree, hardly any branches, but it's surrounded by evergreens, a clump of them. So when they get up in there and look out there, they're really well hidden. You know, the whole body, their silhouettes are not obvious against the sky out. If a deer was behind them, and it wouldn't notice them because they're black silhouette. They look black against the open sky, real dark color, no matter what kind of camo you're wearing. They won't see that. They won't be obvious. So you got to have good natural cover. And if you don't have it, I've tried every way. I've used blinds of every kind, built blinds out of natural branches and all kinds of things. If you don't have it, it's not going to be very good. You're going to be detected very, very quickly. If you're well hidden, you might get 3 half-days, successive half-days of hunting there. A deer will be returning because they didn't see you during their first and maybe second period of feeding, like this morning, this afternoon, and the next morning. They still haven't found you. But usually by the end of the 3rd period, if you're very good, deer will be out there 3 successive half-days. No. That's why when we can hunt one day and find tracks of a buck during that day that was heading to this clear cut over here, we can be pretty sure that deer is going to be there in the morning, and it is not going to, well, there's no reason to believe you were there because you haven't even hunted there yet. So you're going to see him the next morning. Now, if he didn't see you at all, if he didn't detect you, chances are he'll be back there in the afternoon, especially if he's with a doe in heat, you know, because they feed during normal feeding hours no matter what. But anyway, he'll be back. They'll be back, and then and then maybe the following week. That's the 4th time already. Then you're kind of pushing it a little bit, but maybe if you're very good, you'll get that much good hunting out of it. That's about it. Now, we're really good, you know. Like I've said before, maybe you haven't seen many of my videos yet, but my boys and I have taken 101 mature bucks since, my 3 boys and I, since 1990. That's almost 1 apiece every year. Now, how many guys do you know who can say that? Well, we can say that. And it's all been done by stand hunting. Always stand. We've got 6 different methods of stand hunting, and we use one or the other depending on circumstances. But it's all stand hunting. So we're about as good as you can be at stand hunting. But even this, we can't go back and forth to one stand site next to a feeding area day after day and expect to see deer there. That's foolishness. We don't do that. So anyway, so that's one of the most important things you got to know about hunting at a graze area. Don't hunt on the edge. Get back in the woods a little ways and use natural, sit where you got natural openings, where you got natural cover to hide yourself. And with your head, do what I do. You know, wear a camel head net and a camel cap and have something sticking up in front of you to help break up the features of your head. So, anyway, my cameraman John shaking his head because I didn't say camel blaze orange instead of just camel cap. Let's talk about browse areas. Now, some of our best hunting areas have both graze and browse. But once our whitetails start eating browse, they don't pay attention to the grass anymore. You can study what's inside their stomachs, you know, field dressing time. It's all browse in there. Once they turn to browse, they stick to browse, nothing else. So the grass doesn't mean anything anymore. What they want is browse. Now, I told you our favorite, our deer love red osiers first, or red bark dogwoods, another name for them. And they also love mountain maples. Now, red osiers I mentioned, and sugar maple saplings or suckers growing from stumps. Those are real favorites of our whitetails. And those tend to be on, they're in fairly open areas, but it can be mixed timber. There can be elder brush, there can be hazels in the area and a few trees in there. But again, it's the kind of place where sunlight can reach the ground because these are smaller plants. And well, they can get to be big, but if they're in an area where whitetails normally do a lot of browsing, they don't get a chance to get big because they get eaten back every year to about this level, about that high. So, and every year they grow new branches, new little branches that the whitetails will feed on the following year. Seems as though like the red osiers, they eat one twig, next year there'll be 3 there for them. And for every one of those 3 they eat next year, there'll be 3 more next year. They just keep growing more little twigs for the whitetails to eat. So osiers seem like they love being eaten by deer because they flourish despite being eaten by. In fact, even in the summertime, whitetails like to eat the leaves off of them. We find osier out there in the summertime, and the top leaves are all eaten up. They eat the leaves and the little green stems that go to the leaves in the summertime. Anyway, but it's a little more open. So when you're walking in the woods and gee, it's a little open over there. There's not many trees in there. You should be thinking, maybe it's a browse area. And you get over there and you start looking for plants. Now, if you're out there in September and it's strictly a browse area, you're just not going to find many deer tracks or droppings there. There's no reason for the whitetails to be there because they're not feeding on this. Red osiers tend to grow on highlands, but not terribly high. I've found lots of them growing in elder swamps with puddles of water all over the place. And some little ridges and islands out in these swamps that are just covered with red osiers. But most of the best spots are kind of on the edges of wet areas. Like one of the best feeding areas I've ever known, and we've taken several bucks from that area, this feeding area, or close to it. It was right at the edge of a spruce bog, one end of a long spruce bog, and the spruce bog is all damp soil under the moss growing in there. It's all wet in there. There's puddles here and there. And it was growing around one end of it. and kind of mixed timber. There was some tall stuff in there, but it's fairly open, so sun could get down there. Really a fine place, a good feeding area. Oh, one place has always been a really good one. The Aussies are thick as could be on a steep, rocky slope. And more than once I've stood there on that slope and looked at it from the top, and they hadn't been feeding there like on the 7th of November, and come back the next day and they're all white tips all over the place. They must have had a banquet there overnight. Those can grow in a variety of soil types, but they like damp soil. They like their roots damp. Now, mountain maples are another thing. They can grow in shade. They love cedar swamps, and they can grow really thick. You'll see a picture here of a cedar swamp in Wisconsin. And it's kind of dark under there, and you see all kinds of these growing, these little stems sticking up all over the place in there. And you see they're all gnarled and crooked, and that's from whitetails browsing on them every year. They keep eating them back, and they get all crooked and gnarly and dark colored. And anyway, and then the other one, the sugar maples, they kind of grow on highlands as well, but sugar maples they can grow on edges of swamps and bogs as well. And in clear cuts where they've been cutting mature sugar maples, the stumps can be just bristling with red stems that get to be really big. They can grow into big trees eventually, but whitetails love those too. They're dark red, and they're kind of a sweet, pulpy tasting stem. You can chew on, take one of those stems and chew it on it, and it's kind of sweet. And that bark is real tender, and the wood is kind of tender. Whitetails love those. So those are the three main foods other than the acorns I talked about last time that whitetails love to live. Now, browse areas, if they're really thick, can have points. The way they make clear cuts where I hunt, it's a Superior National Forest. They don't just cut big squares, mile this way and that way, or maybe a 40 or a 80. They don't cut clear cuts anymore, or rectangular. Now they're irregular all along the edges. Might get 80 acres out of it, but it covers a long area. It's like a lake with all kinds of points and islands and bays, and that's wonderful for wildlife, wonderful for deer, wonderful for grouse. Really good, those edges are really good. So they're really nice, and there's places where maybe 2 points that join one another and the deer cross there, because that way they're in the open the least amount of time when they go across. Or there might be a little island of mature timber out in the middle, and some bucks love to bed in places like that. And we've got something like that where we've taken some fine bucks over the years, and the islands out in big clear cuts. So you can have mixed timber, and the kind of places where does like to bed, mixed timber with grasses and hazels and elders and all kinds of different kinds of trees that are common to our hunting area, but sort of open. So sunlight gets down to these low-growing shrubs. Well, they're low-growing because deer love them, and so it's kind of open. So you go out there and look around. Now, if the area is only a browse area, and some are, the deer only feed there, like beginning in the second week in November where we hunt. Rest of the time they don't even bother to go there. They're uninterested in that until it's time to start eating browse. So you can go in there, say in September and maybe early October, and walk around there. There's not a sign of deer, no fresh deer signs anywhere. There's no tracks, no fresh droppings. I mean, you would think, wow, this is no place to hunt. I'm not going to come back here. But you'd be really missing the boat if you didn't know about one special sign to look for. And that's raggedy brown or black tips on branches on browse plants. Now you go out there and look at those things, and sometimes, when the new growth comes up and there's leaves on them, it can kind of hide the previous year's browsing. But you get in a place and look, spend some time looking, look around in there, and you find a lot of ragged tips. Tips are always ragged. When a whitetail bites off a stem on a woody plant, it isn't a clean cut like with a pruner. It's kind of chewed off and ripped off because most of that's done with their front teeth, and they don't have upper front teeth. They just have lower front teeth, so they're kind of gumming it. The lower teeth come up and get a hold of that thing, and they kind of saw it away, just pull it away, and then start chewing on it. And maybe they'll do it a bit at a time down to a certain level where the wood is starting to get harder and more hard to chew. But the ragged tips on top, and they're black or brown, what that means is if you find a lot of that in this area where there are browse plants that are characteristic of the type that your whitetails love to eat, and there could be quite a other, there's sumacs and all kinds of other browse plants that maybe your whitetails like because that's what they have. But I'm telling you about what we find. But it doesn't matter what kind of browse plants you're using, they're feeding on. It'll be the same thing. There'll be these ragged brown or black tips on it. And that kind of sign, that's a deer sign, was made during the previous November and December. That's when whitetails were feeding in this area a lot. If there's a lot of these kind of tips here, this was a real favorite browse area for whitetails during the previous November and December. And it will be again this year. And don't worry, if you find a bunch of those, you can bet the farm this is going to be a favorite browse area of whitetails in your hunting area, at least during the first 1 to 3 feeding cycles that you hunt there. After that, forget it. Maybe come back a week later. Maybe some will be back. Maybe some 2.5-year-old buck, they'll be back again after breeding is over, and they'll start feeding in there. Maybe some older bucks that were chased off by the dominant breeding buck before breeding began and kept off while breeding was in progress, they'll be coming back. And all of a sudden there could be several different ages of bucks feeding in a browse area like that later. In our area, after the 17th, or beginning the 17th of November, that's when we start looking for that. Because it doesn't take long before these lesser bucks that got chased off to realize it's safe to go home again. And they're anxious. Boy, they come streaming back there probably overnight after that. I don't know how they know. Maybe it has something to do with whether they smell doing estrus pheromone in the air or whatever. But at some point, at this time, they'll be coming back. Now, those areas have a lot of, a good browse area. Some of the best browse areas I know, you can't see 30 feet through that stuff. Maybe you get some glimpses of deer way over there, maybe 30, 40 feet away, walking through it. And you wait for them to get to an opening somewhere in there before you can fire at it. Done that lots of times. But you can't see very far in there. So in that case, maybe you can be close to the edge of the browse area. I still say you should stay back there. Staying back there, like I say, most guys have been sitting in trees for years. They're going to say, oh, this is terrible. I can't see very far. I want to see way over there and way over there. Not realizing that if you can see way over there, deer way over there can see you. They see you move, and they can be maybe 100 feet away, and you don't realize they're there because it's kind of a little brushy over there, but they see you really clearly. And the game is over when that starts happening. But anyway, you don't see as many, but when you see them, they're right there. When you're well hidden, they're close. Your shots will be real easy. Those deer won't be bounding and running. They'll be moving slowly, stop right there in front of you, get your gun, and get real easy shots. Most of the big bucks I've taken, except one. One I got 400 yards away. It was unusually long opening. But at any rate, most of the bucks I've taken have been taken within 30 yards. And we're talking about like one every year. And then passing up younger ones, you know, watching yearlings go by, 2.5-year bucks going by, so all that, I don't want to take that one. Especially when you know there's a really big one in this area. But anyway, so, and I see a lot of other deer too as well. And that always adds excitement to it. And I like having does around and they're young because they're such great decoys. So, anyway, that's where you can maybe get deeper into a browse area, different spots. But, you know, you might end up with a lot of them behind you, downwind of you, or crosswind of you, or downwind of you at any rate. And once they're there, they know you're there, and they're going to start avoiding that spot where you are. But if you're back in the woods and they're spending all their time feeding out there in the browse area, none of them are going to get downwind of you if you're doing things properly. So even there, where you can't see very far out into that area where all this browse is, it's best to stay back from the edge in forest cover. So that's important to know. Well, now you know all about how to identify graze areas and browse areas in the woods, and how to hunt them properly, how to stand hunt them properly. So with that, that's the end of this subject. Except be sure and poke that red button down there and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really would appreciate that. You know, I have you guys that do that subscribe, to thank for giving me the chance to continue bringing you these deer hunting seminars. And poking that thumbs up button as well, that's important too. That makes it possible, and has been making it possible, for me to do as many of these presentations that I've done. Gee, it's about 112 now, something like that. This is pretty complete. Well, it isn't complete, you know, they're little snippets at a time. Not like in the book where everything is discussed in great detail. I don't have time to do that on these YouTube presentations. So, one of these days you've got to get this book for your complete education for the rest of your life. A book your kids will be using when they grow up and become deer hunters. This will be the best primer for them, primer, to get started as deer hunters, to learn the really good stuff right from the beginning, incomplete, no lying, this is proper scientifically evolved stuff in here, no stupid ideas. This is all based on what 80 to 90% of all whitetails, well, whitetails in each of the 5 behavioral classes of whitetails do under similar circumstances over a period of up to 10 years, sometimes more. It took 20 years for me to finally be sure of what I had to write about the whitetail rut. And so there's a lot of hard work that went into writing what's in this book, which took me 3 years to write, by the way. And 20 years of stuff in it that I hadn't been printed before in book form. And so a lot of new things in here that you won't find nowhere else. Just like these YouTube seminars I've been giving. Where do you hear this stuff, huh? Isn't it different, huh? Well, the reason it's different is because of that kind of research. And no goofy ideas here. So, well, thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you again soon. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.